Hello, in this video, we are going to look at solving equations by factoring. One of the most important things about solving equations by factoring, or the reason it all works, is because of the zero product property, which you know whether you realize it or not, or you likely know, because you know if you take 5 times 0, you get 0, and if you take 0 times 5, you get 0, and if you take x times 0, you get 0, and anything times 0 has to equal 0. So if you're multiplying two things, a and b, then A has to equal 0, or B has to equal 0. Whoops, I said not equal 0. I didn't say anything, I just said not equal. Then A equals 0, or B equals 0. That's what has to be true. That's what the zero product property says. So that makes that leads us to our steps for factoring, or for solving by factoring. We got to make sure your equation equals 0. So do whatever you can to make this happen. Depending on the type of equation will depend on what steps you need to take to make this happen. And then we factor, use all the methods for factoring that hopefully you know, and then set each factor equal to 0 to solve. So one thing that you might want to notice is that if you cannot factor, if number 2 is difficult for you, this is going to be difficult stuff. So on one hand, you'll get a lot of practice with factoring, so that's good. This might be the time it clicks. On the other hand, you may want to find some other help with factoring or some more practice. Okay, and if you know how to factor these, set them equal to 0 and factor away, pause the video, and then push play to check your work. So here, to set it equal to 0, we're going to move the 9y over 9y squared. And then remember, when we factor, the first thing we always do is look for a greatest common factor. And these have a y in common. And then we need two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 9, because we can use the old AC method. And we get 4 and 5 for those numbers. A is 1, so we can use the shortcut. And this gives us our factors. One thing to notice is it was to the third power, so we would expect 3 factors, or not always true, but if they're real zeros, it will be true. And so they're all linear, 3 factors, and set each one equal to 0. And you might be able to skip this in your work and just do this step in your head, which I'll probably get to on the next one. But if you need to, write it out. So y equals -4, 0, and -5. Do not forget the y equals 0. A lot of people forget this guy and just leave them hanging. To write it as a set, use those commas, and oh, it's -5. I guess I wrote them in the wrong order. We'll just rewrite that. Sorry about that. -5, -4, and 0. And they don't have to be in the right order, but it's good practice to put them in the right order. Okay, try number 2. You might think, well, I'm going to set it equal to 0, I'll subtract 20, but you still need to FOIL all this out. So let's just do that first. X squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 6 is equal to 20. And then we'll do two things at once. We'll combine like terms. And then let's move the 20 over to get -14. So pause and make sure you're kind of up with there and you can kind of see what's going on. And then you can factor. We need two numbers that multiply to -14 and add to 5. So that's a +7 and -2 for the factoring. And once again, we have a 1 in front of the x squared term, so we can take a shortcut there and just write the factors. And then set them both equal to 0. You would subtract the 7 and add the 2. And so x has 2 solutions there. Okay, let's look at number 3. Number 3 is an absolute value equation. So that gives us 2 different equations. We have x squared minus 2x minus 16 is equal to 8, or x squared minus 2x minus 16 is equal to -8. So this is a little bit more work because the one problem does turn into 2. but you can handle it. You can do this. So you may take a minute, pause the video, and work these two out separately. X squared minus 2x. And then when you subtract 8, you get negative 24 is equal to 0. And then over here, you have to add 8. And you get negative 8 is equal to 0. And these both factor, or I think they do. Let's see. So times multiply to negative 24 and add to negative 2 would be negative 6 and positive 4. And then here multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 2. That'd be negative 4 and positive 2. And then you can set them all equal to 0. And you get x is equal to 6, x is equal to negative 4, x is equal to positive 4, and x is equal to negative 2. Now it's absolute value, so it's always a good idea to check your work in absolute value. We won't hear they all check out. And if you're on a test or a quiz or something where you're being graded, always a good idea to check your work also. So anytime you're solving, plug the number back in. Let's just write these as set. If you want to use plus or minus, we'll use that. Plus or minus 4, negative 2, and 6. Okay, on this next one, we're going to solve for y. And notice there's 4 terms. We're going to try to solve by grouping. So if I take a y out of the first 2 terms, we get y minus a. Take a y, let's do, sorry, not a y, a negative b is what these have in common. So we'll take a negative b, and that's y minus a. And then y minus a is my new greatest common factor, and then y minus b. And so y is equal to a, or y is equal to b. When you set them equal to 0, and then add the a and add the b. Okay, there's going to be 2 more problems we look at, a couple word problems. So take a minute, read through this, pause the video, and see if you can solve this equation on your own. Okay, so they're saying a construction worker fires a nail gun upward from a height of 144. It's propelled at 128. But here's the big thing. The height is given with this function. We want to know how long it takes to hit the ground. So notice this function is quadratic. And so we have this idea of a parabola. So now it's going up and then coming back down. So it looks something like this on its firing point. And we want to know how long it takes to go from here over to here. We want to know t. The height when it hits the ground is 0. So we can set the whole equation equal to 0 and then solve for t, because we want to know when it hits the ground, which is when the height is 0. Here, because it's equal to 0 and the greatest common factor is 16, you can either divide both sides by 16, or I'm going to do negative 16, or take out a 16. Let's divide by negative 16. And the reason, and then we'll have to do it on the left side. So the left side, we just get 0. And then we get t squared, and then it'd be minus 8t. And then plus, minus 9t. Minus 9. And so the reason we divide by negative, because all our factoring is a little better if the term in front of the squared is positive. And so now we can do our AC method. Y is equal to, 0 is equal to, and we need 2 numbers that multiply to negative 9 and add to 8. And those are negative 9 and positive 1. And so time is either 9 seconds or time is negative 1 seconds. Well, negative 1 seconds is time travel, so we can throw that out because that one doesn't make sense in the situation. what's happening there, if this is our nail gun, is we're finding this value here that doesn't exist in the real world. From this, if this is where the nail is launched, it goes up and then it must land at 9 seconds. One thing with word problems is always make sure your answer makes sense. If you get a super small number or a super big number here, maybe you made a common mistake, but leads to an answer that doesn't make sense. But 9 seconds does make sense for a nail to go up in the air and come down and be up there for a while, but it is realistic. Okay, number 6. Take a minute, pause, and read through that one. It says a total of 34 feet of lumber is used around the perimeter of a gate. The diagonal brace is 13. What are the length and width of the gate? So let's think about a gate. And we're going to assume it's a rectangle. We probably should put that in the problem. And this is 13. And then if we add up all the way around all of these sides, then I get 34. And so let's use it just X and Y. So 34 is equal to 2x plus 2y. Okay, what else do we know? We also know that our gate forms a right triangle. So we know x squared plus y squared is equal to 13 squared. From the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So this is a little tricky to solve, but you can do it with substitution. Let's go ahead and solve for x up top. So if I subtract 2y from both sides, I get 34 minus 2y is equal to 2x. Divided by 2, you get 17 minus y is equal to x. Okay, so now that x can be plugged into here. So 17, let's put it right here. 17 minus y squared plus y squared is equal to 169 is what y squared is. So now you have an equation that you can solve for y. You might want to pause here and make sure you can follow that and give yourself time to catch up and think a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to FOIL this. So we have 17 minus y times 17 minus y. 17 times 17 is 289. And then a minus 17y minus 17y, that's minus 34y. Plus y squared is equal to 169. Okay, so we have all of our values here. Now we can combine like terms and set it equal to 0. So let's move everything to the left. Y squared is y squared plus y squared is 2y squared minus 34y. And then when I subtract 289 minus 169, I get 120 is equal to 0. Can divide everything by 2. Then we need two numbers that multiply to 60 and add to 17. And those are negative 12 and negative 5. So y is equal to 12 or y is equal to 5. So there's two answers here, and this happens to be, well, if y is 12, then this y is 12. And that means that we could solve for x, but you would get 5 when you do that. And if you want to plug that in, you can. 34 is equal to 2x. 2x plus 2y, which we said was 12. Then 10 is equal to 2x, and x is equal to 5. So the length and the width are the gate. It is 12 feet by 5 feet. Okay, so with this, I would try to maybe work through this again, think about, at least explain to yourself how we did each step, because there's quite a bit in that problem. But good luck with this, and reach out if you have any questions.